Hello everyone, the claim I will be refuting today is that children on social media are exposed to harm and danger. The speakers supported their claim with 3 subpoints. The first being children on social media are more likely to suffer identity theft. Number 2, children are easily exposed to being harassed. And number 3, young age children do not understand what happens around social media. So overall, the argument fails to provide adequate evidence to support its main assertions. And right there, I could really stop my refutation because an argument without evidence is simply incomplete. However, I will provide my own compilation of statistical data to dispute their assertions. So on to claim number 1, children on social media are more likely to suffer identity theft. The claim, as I said, does not take into account any evidence. And as a matter of fact, actually the speaker did reason that children are prone to identity theft, and this is a fact. It is a very real problem. However, this has nothing to do with social media. As a matter of fact, the majority of children that fall victim to identity theft know their perpetrator. And according to a study done by Javelin in 2018, one reason it's so difficult to prevent this familiar crime is that many of these perpetrators have legitimate access to the child's personal information. This study showed that 60% of child victims know their perpetrator, a parent or guardian, other family member, or family friend. By comparison, only 7% of adult ID theft victims know who did it. So while the speaker did explain how child identity theft is a very real problem, this has nothing to do with social media because the majority of children that fall victim to identity theft know their perpetrator because they have legitimate access to that information. So on to claim number 2. Children are easily exposed to being harassed. The assertion that children are easily exposed to harassment does not consider recent studies and data that are in conflict with the speaker's argument in online harassment. The speaker reasoned that online harassment results in higher suicide rates and mental health problems. But in reality, studies that analyze online harassment in relation to teen suicide have found that social media is not the primary or sole factor in teen suicides. According to the American Public Health Association 2012, studies that analyze online harassment in relation, the variability in social media format, use patterns, and other influences on suicidal behavior makes it very difficult to test social media as a variable that predicts suicidal behavior. For example, an increased prevalence of other risk factors such as alcohol use and availability of firearms among teens might also explain the rise in suicide rates among this vulnerable group. So while harassment does occur online, it's not really the primary factor when considering suicide rates and mental health problems. Secondly, the assertion does not consider the possibility of positive experiences associated with social media. According to a study done by the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience by Duke University, the effects of mobile technologies are not uniform, that benefits appear to be conferred for some adolescents, and risks exaggerated among others. So while people with current mental health problems might see exaggerated risks when using social media, people without mental health problems are likely to see positive experiences. And this is confirmed by a study done by Pew Research Center in 2012, where 62% of online teens say they have had an experience online that made them feel good about themselves. So the claim that harassment results in mental health issues and high suicide rates is simply unfounded and ungrounded. So on to claim number 3, young age children do not understand what happens around social media. This assertion once again provides no evidence to support the claim. And the concern brought up by the speaker was that children are simply unknowledgeable about the effects of social media. However, studies show that children are in fact extremely cautious on social media, regulating who sees their information. The speaker stated that anyone can see what you post on social media, but according to a study done by Pew Research Center in 2012, teenagers are more and more cautious as to who sees their information. About 60% of teen Facebook users set their profiles to private, and most report high levels of confidence in their ability to manage their settings. So basically, the majority of teens are blocking people they don't want to talk to, and they're allowing people that they want to see their information through settings and privacy usage. And finally, the majority of parents have access to their children's social media accounts. So according to the speaker, children don't know the effects of social media, But according to a study done by Pew Research Center in 2012, only 5% of teen Facebook users say they limit what their parents see. So if the children don't know the effects of social media, in reality, 95% of parents are regulating their child's social media use, and so therefore, this issue really isn't a problem. So all this goes to say that the argument fails to provide any adequate evidence, and therefore her assertions cannot be confirmed as true. Thank you.
All right, structurally, everything's easy to follow on the ID theft thing. You challenged the absence of evidence from the advocate. I don't remember exactly what information they provided there. You suggested there was none, so I think that that's, a pretty dramatic example. Again, one of those things that you might point out, was there a statistical reference? Did they cite any authority? If there's an absence of those things, that's a little bit clearer. I thought you had some interesting counterclaim issues here, that the people, you admit that ID theft does exist, but the people who, the ID theft is committed by, there's usually some relationship or they know that person in some context. I think maybe an example would help explain that, but in contrast to adults, I thought that was there might even be a way to suggest that the information that you've got there shows that the problem is the way the advocate's talking about it. It just depends on how you interpret that evidence. You've interpreted it in a different way. To me, it seems like people are giving up information to people online that they shouldn't be giving up the information to just because they have a relationship or there's a reason to do that. So I see the inference that you're making there. I'm not sure that you've arrived at the correct conclusion on it, but I understand the argument that you're making. I think your arguments on the other 2 points are a little bit stronger. You've got updated information about the use of social media and the impact that it has on people. The students, the kids are usually satisfied with their relationships. They have happier outcomes about sorts of a variety of things. You diminish the impact of social media on suicides to some degree. I think the one caveat that you put there suggests that the research isn't able to reach that conclusion. I don't think that it offers the opposite conclusion. I think that's maybe a slight exaggeration of what the evidence says, but you did find some evidence that applied to that particular point. All right, I'm trying to rush a little bit so that we can get in one more speaker.